Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Hobby Ramblers with our special guest, Mr. Andrew from the Australian Horus Heresy community. He is one of the champions of the community and is responsible for writing some choice Xeno rules for the Horus Heresy rule set.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, sir. So, what can you tell me about yourself, my man?
Well, as you said, I'm in Australia, so based in Canberra. I was probably one of the first EOs. There was a group of us in Australia to kick off 30k events in Australia. There was Michael up in Queensland, and then the Michael and Tim from Eye of Horus came along shortly after that. So there was a small kind of group of us at the start who kind of got the ball rolling and set the scene, so to speak, with narrative gaming.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very small community back then. It's been.
And what was the community like before that? Was it more like competitive play, or was it like what was the gaming like that they were doing?
Well, that's the interest. There's always been what I feel is a narrative gaming. So most of the time, those gamers were garage gamers, so just playing in your lounge room, whatever. But in Canberra especially, there was a very, very strong narrative 40k community. We were actually an apocalypse gaming group. We would play apocalypse games once a month with linked narrative campaigns. So we were playing 5,000 to 10,000 points, 2 games a day, just smacking out games.
Wow!
But it was all non-competitive, no podium finishes. It was just all narrative.
So just put down models and have fun.
Yeah. It was just big planetary storylines, and then people would bring their big toys. So there were Titans and all that sort of stuff floating around. So that's kind of the lead into to the heresy for us, was that there was probably in Canberra we would average, I think we were getting 16 to 24 players at Apocalypse every month, which was a solid turnout for our groups. And then pretty much when the first Black Book dropped, people were really, really interested in it, because it wasn't necessarily the setting, it was the fact that it was by Bly, because most of us were massive fans of him. The Badab Wars, that was the heresy before the heresy.
That was...
And so... Yeah,
I remember when
fantastic.
I remember when Badab Wars first came out, and I was a young lad, and I was like so excited. I was like, "What are these characters? Oh!"
A phenomenal narrative. The setting was great, and so when the Black Books dropped, that was kind of, everyone started looking at that, and it's like, oh, that's great. So we migrated from Apocalypse across to Heresy pretty quickly there, and then we started playing. We'd already had the routine of monthly events, so we just continued playing monthly campaigns, and from there it kind of spread. It's really, really good fun. Healthy, good start. But we're kind of pretty lucky in that aspect that we hit the ball, the ground running, and just continued to grow from there. What the other groups in Australia were like, I'm not sure. I would hazard a guess that there's always, in whatever kind of city and community that you've got, there's always that narrative gaming group.
Yep. Definitely.
Just most of them play outside of stores, because the tendency of most stores is a tournament. And that's nothing bad. That's just the way that the vast majority of the community was introduced to the game, and that's the best format for the stores in most cases. The irony is that most of the 30k veterans were 40k players. We didn't suddenly just start playing 30k. We all played 40k, let's face it.
You didn't have a grand council meeting and just go like, okay, what we're doing this month, we're all going to start 30k.
That's right.
We're all going to enjoy it.
And a lot of us still play 40k narrative. So it's not the rule system; it's the setting and the way you play it. So in a lot of those, so Brisbane and Sydney had a good narrative scene. Melbourne was a little bit slow to come on board because that was a very, very strong tournament city. There's a lot of tournament 40k down there. Again, though, before 30k started, we had 3 or 4 people that would come up from Melbourne to our 40k apocalypse campaigns once a month. So they'd drive 6 hours to come to the event every month. They'd stay overnight and that sort of stuff because they didn't have much of a scene back there. They started doing one and would reciprocate. But so there's players. There were always players out there in that.
I mean, again, that really shows the passion of those narrative players to drive 6 hours into state just for an event, like a once a month event. I think that really shows the drive of the narrative community, where if they can't get it from somewhere, they'll go somewhere else to get it. It's not like it's like the square peg round hole theory. If your community is competitive and you're just not, and you're a narrative player, you're not gonna fit in no matter what you do.
Yeah. So and that works in the reverse. I've always told people when I've coached them for running events and that sort of stuff, and trying to grow communities, is don't try to convert people. If they're a competitive player, they're a competitive player. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way that they enjoy the game. Introduce them to narrative, and if they don't like it, that's fine. You don't want.
And we are back from our crash. Don't know what happened with OBS. Please fix your stuff. Why we keep crashing?
All good.
Oh my gosh. All right. So what we left off on was the why we shouldn't convert people.
Pegs, square, round.
Yep. Square peg, round hole. It's not going to be fun for anyone in the community. They're always going to create friction. There's nothing wrong with how they're engaging in the hobby. Just let them engage in the way they want.
Do your own thing. So that's how we started building up our groups. Was as I said earlier, we came from garage gaming, and that's where we drew most of our core players. There were some people that came along that were traditionally competitive players. They hung around, they enjoyed the narrative, but most enjoy competitive playing, so they went back to competitive playing. We never tried to convert them, and I always encouraged when I was tutoring people and helping people grow their communities, don't try to convert these people. If they don't like narrative play, they don't like narrative play. Don't stress. I think one of the big things with narrative gaming that people forget is, especially with the ITCs and that sort of stuff, they see these big tournaments with 50, 60, 80 people. They go, oh, to be a successful event, we need more people. For a narrative event, you don't need quantity of players. In fact, if anything, once you start getting over 24 players, maybe even 18 to 20, it starts getting too cumbersome and you start losing the narrative. And it starts losing flavour. So a sign of a successful narrative event isn't the number of players, it's the story that gets developed by the players that are there. And some of the best games that I've had have been between 3 or 4 people in a garage over the course of a weekend. That's not to say that at some of our big active heresies we'd had ridiculously awesome events, but you don't strive to get, you don't benchmark yourself and say it was a successful event because we got 30 players. It's like, don't kind of pin that on yourself.
No.
So
you for these kinds of narrative events, you really want to benchmark it by, did everyone have a good time?
That's right.
What did everyone take away from this experience? Because I think the experience really speaks for itself. I absolutely remember when Games Workshop used to run these kinds of big narrative ones. One comes to mind, which is the the big 13th Black Crusade one that that had like an online kind of like registration process, and
Yep.
like depending on your wins and losses of your armies, you could you could you could skew the narrative in a certain way. And I
Yeah.
think that was so successful because that gave players the opportunity to influence the narrative of the universe they love so much. And even
Yep.
if it was like a small influence, you did something. You did
That's right.
something.
They were counted. They didn't win the tournament, but they were still counted. So a lot of our early events went like that. We had the entire east coast of the EOs would talk to each other. We had coordinated campaigns. We had linked campaigns that interacted with each other. People would travel to and from. Similar to those reasons, they would go to an event because they would see that their activities, their points, their games would influence the outcome. And when they went away, they would see that it had influenced the overall campaign.
Yeah.
In a similar way to the Black Crusade, we used the Oz 30K site, which evolved from the old Oz 40K site, which I had for Apocalypse.
Yep.
And Oz 30K is used for tracking large-scale campaigns. All of the narrative records. It's got system maps, subsector maps, planetary maps. You kind of record all of your campaigns there, and it's all in one little pocket of space. So when we first started out, it was kind of isolated planets scattered around. But over the course of a decade, all of those games started overflowing and interacting, and people were kind of tracking their armies and moving through all of these campaign spaces. And as you said, players enjoy seeing that their army had an impact and did something and was mentioned and played a role in those things.
Yeah.
So it was very kind of those early days were really fun in kind of building and setting those precedences and creating things that people could follow on from. The global campaigns were a big one that I helped run. The Ive Horace guys helped run a few. They got together with all of the different podcasts. And what we found there was it allowed people who may not be part of a larger group, like in Canberra or Sydney or Melbourne or anything like that, but it allowed them to take part in a wider campaign, like the Black Crusade, so they could still feel involved in a 30K, a large scale 30K narrative campaign. So there are a lot of people who would comment to us and thank us that, look, there's only three of us here. Can we take part? And it's like that. That's the entire point of a global
Yeah.
campaign, so that
Yeah.
you can interact. And if you kind of let us know where you are, then hopefully we might be able to get other players. And there were a number of groups that actually formed out of these things. They were talking to Tim and the IF Horace podcast and that, and they got more players in a local area, and groups formed out of that. So
Yeah.
it
I
was,
think once you are a part of a small gaming group, like just in your garage with your circle of friends, right, and then you join like a much larger one, there, like you get that sense of belonging. You get that sense
yeah,
of like inclusivity. Like I'm part of
yeah,
this,
yeah,
and it kind of like pushes you to want to get more people involved because you feel so excited about it, and you're just
yeah,
like, I want more of my friends to get to know this because I think this is a really cool thing.
yeah,
Like I want like everyone like in my gaming group to get to know this, like get into Horus Heresy because of the narrative. Like
that's right.
yeah, so
Yeah,
like that is a really powerful emotion. That's a really powerful feeling that
and
people
it's exactly, and it's a strong organic growth, as you were saying earlier. It's the growth that you want.
yeah.
It's players who want to be there for the same reasons. That's the perfect growth that you want.
Yeah.
And something that so many players or group coordinators in kind of smaller groups kind of struggle with is they want to grow their group from nothing to 20 or 30 people, and it's like, don't do it. Just slowly get there, get half a dozen people, and then in 6 months' time, those half a dozen will have brought another half a dozen, and then
Yeah.
another 6 months' time, you'll be sitting around I honestly think that the perfect size for a local group is 12 to 15 players.
Yeah.
Any more than that, and you start getting too many people, as with every social group,
Yeah, you can't
you'll get
keep track
splintering
of everyone.
factions. And
Yeah,
that's right.
like it's
And
like how am I supposed to remember like 12 or how am I supposed to remember more than 15 people's like birthdays? That's not
that's
gonna
right.
happen. That's not gonna
Let
happen.
alone names. You got to remember
I,
people's names. Get out of it.
yeah, unless you start like having like name tags in the local gaming club. I'm like that's weird. It's
That's
like
right.
oh
Yeah. So yeah, that it was kind of a really really strong growth for
Hmm.
Australia, New Zealand as well. We had people coming over from New Zealand to our
Oh
events.
yeah, the Kiwis. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that was no mean feat for them. Like that's an international trip. It
Yeah,
may
yeah, that
be
is.
a very close one, but and it was it was just a really fantastic time. It's like uh, we, unlike a lot of the other international groups, we didn't have large scale conventions like Adepticon and LVO and that sort of stuff. Our biggest gaming event was Canberra's CanCon, which happened once a year in the middle of summer.
Yep, I definitely
Um,
remember CanCon. I remember
yeah,
sweating my ass off and was like,
that's right.
I'm a hairy
And
lad. I stink, and everyone stinks. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I still can't understand how a requirement on those gaming systems was not deodorant. It's like, why were you not making people? It was
I think
disgusting,
the
that place.
problem was that the deodorant didn't help.
Yeah. So,
When you're in
the,
that kind of hot box, it's like it doesn't help. It's a drop in the
yeah.
bucket.
So, middle of summer, Canberra, 35 to 40 degree heat. That's Celsius. So, I don't know
Yeah,
what that is in Fahrenheit for the Americans. We're in, uh, it was a convention centre that theoretically had air conditioning, but it didn't work. People kept on opening the roller doors to go out for a cigarette, and
yeah.
they crammed the people in. You were literally kind of butt to butt. It was terrible.
Oh man, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I remember that. That was just. It was
it was
sticky. It
revolting.
was hot. It was smelly. People had to go out because they were people just forgot to drink water because everyone was so
Uh,
excited. It was just like, and people were
yeah.
like feeling sick because of it. It's just like, oh, it's just too hot. It was too hot.
So we didn't even consider running an event at CanCon. So instead, we actually ran it over the same weekend. And I'm in Canberra, so same city. But instead, we ran it at a sports club or a tradies club. So it was private function room, air conditioned, licensed bar, full counter meal bistros. And it was about 5 minutes away from CanCon. And we had a 2 hour lunch break at our event. So people would just go, okay, we're finished. Then they go back, bolt up to CanCon, have a look at all the suckers in 40-degree heat, buy some stuff, then come back to our event.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
that was
Yeah.
awesome.
Like I know where
Uh,
I would have gone if I was if I knew you guys were there. I'd be like, okay, I'm going over there, guys. Screw this.
So that was the first Act of Heresy event I ran with Dave Carpenter from Hobart. So we only had 24 players there, but we had players from all over the country, and that was kind of a first big scale
Yeah.
loyalists versus traders. There was
Yes.
no podium finishes. It was just teams. There were no prizes for first place, and we really, from the start, we really tried to make that event a premium event. Like the focus was on trying to have people go away thinking that was a really awesome event and kind of this stuff, so swag bags, so dog tags, decals, patches,
Yeah.
glasses,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
um, rather than spending money on a Thunderhawk or whatever for the winner. The vast bulk of the entry fees went to the actual players in the swag bags.
Yeah.
And it created that sense of this was a really, really awesome event.
Yeah, like it was it like I think that's a really, really great idea because I found that whenever like I went to a convention, like it didn't even have to be like a Warhammer convention. It could be like an anime convention or something, like a pop culture convention, right?
Yep.
So I find that the like yeah, over the last few years, like the swag bags were getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and like it just the value for me just wasn't there as a
Yeah.
person going to there. Like, there was nothing really I was interested in. And
Yeah.
like, nothing in the swag bags, and like even like the shops, they weren't very interesting to me. And it was just like, it's just the same old stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what's the point of me coming here anymore? Because
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying myself. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important like thing that like like organizers need to understand, that like, if you want to run an event, if you want to run something, it's not just about the prizes. It's about the value of the
That's right.
consumer, of the people. Like, are they getting their, like, if you're going to
Yeah.
charge for tickets, are they getting their money's worth in terms of like
Yeah.
enjoyment out of it? You're going to make sure that
And if
they're
you've got
taken care of
expensive
first.
And if you've got expensive prizes, then yeah, those 3 or 4 people who win prizes will go away. Yeah, that was a great event. The other 40 people will go, that was cool. Congratulations for Joe for winning a paint set for having best painted. He's probably already got those paints because he won best painted. And so that was our mentality of try to give something significant to everybody there, so
Yes.
that everybody goes away, go, that was awesome, and look forward to it the next year.
Yeah, and
And
something
so,
significant doesn't need to be something expensive. It can just be
no,
something really freaking cool, like those
yep,
dog tags, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you can go to any, like, dog tag, like a printing shop, right, or any like metalworker shop, right, and you get those like dog tags like stamped out like for pretty cheap, and
yeah,
but that means so much to somebody. Like, they're gonna put that on their keychain, and they're gonna always remember that. Like, one summer, like one Australian summer, they went off to like, the strange land of Australia, and they're like a U.S. like Texan cowboy, and they're like, yeah, like, I remember that one, like, Horus Heresy night I had, like, and that was
that's right.
amazing. So that,
Yeah,
like, that small little memento like carries over for a lifetime, and
yeah.
that is.
And a lot of those things you can do, as you said, on the cheap, if you can just try to think outside the box a little bit. And that's what I did with kind of the active heresies and a small hobby business that I set up for tagged events, was to try and come up with ideas for swag for EOs, so that we could do it en masse for people, so that the EOs could afford it, like the dog tags, and the patches and the decals. And we kind of tried different things. We did event models each year, so kind of like what Forge World did with their event only models. So we had event models once a year.
Yep.
Um, we
How did you get your
started
event
going on
models?
to. Um, well, I knew a couple of sculptors in Greece, so I would commission him. I'd run a Kickstarter for a model.
Okay.
We would have a general release version. Would then have an event only version.
Hmm.
So the Kickstarter would fund the development of both of those models. I would then get, again, Dave was a caster. He had a casting business. I would contract him to cast up the models, and would sell the models to EOs around the world who are running events, and go, well, this model is only for EOs. Like, only you can buy this model for your event. And then there's general sale ones. And so kind of each year we would do a different model. And we
Oh,
did that for
wow.
3 or 4 years.
That
So
is freaking amazing. That is freaking like amazing,
yeah,
like logistics wise. Like, that is
yeah.
like.
It was good fun. It was
Yeah.
an active heresy allowed us to do that to a large extent, because we grew it to such a player base, that it could nearly kind of do the break even point. Like, the number of players that we were getting could justify doing that investiture, and then that allowed other smaller groups who would only have 10 or 12 players attending to be able to do something that only an event of 50 or so players could like the models, like coins. We made solid metal coins. We had glasses. We had, yeah, the last event, Active Heresy 5, we had collector cards. So
Oh,
we had a heap of fan made artwork. So I contacted 8
yeah.
different artists, got their permission to or we made a series of 108 different cards, printed them up on proper cardstock, and then I got the what do you call them? The sealed boosters. I've still got some here actually.
What, you got sealed boosters for them?
So I'm not
That
sure whether that's
is...
going to work. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's a foil
yeah.
booster. So then you put
Jeez.
the cards in the bag and get a hair straightener and seal it there, and it seals it. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
at the Active Heresy event, part of the player swag was that everybody got this sealed booster, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" And they opened it up, and they were collector cards, and like on the bottom it would say 15 of 100, and they're like, oh. And like instantly, people were like, oh, started trading. You just see these groups of people going around, and they were opening them up and looking at
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
And of course, I got some printed with foil. So one card in every booster pack was a foil. Um, so people were trying to collect all the foils,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was crazy. And they proved really really popular. And so I did a big reorder of those. Unfortunately, I did a massive reorder of those just before COVID hit. Um, which worked out a reasonably way. It was a good kind of fundraising method for some of those artists and that sort of stuff. So we
Yeah,
kept
yeah.
on selling them over events and everything. But yeah, kind of those sorts of things are like people might not even remember the games that they played, but they remembered trading collector cards with other
Yes.
people to try and get all of the Primarchs,
Yeah.
or to try and get all of the battle cards. And the active heresies were normally started Friday night and finished Sunday, so people would stay there for dinner. So Saturday night was the big night of like gaming would finish 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Then people would go get a drink and a meal, and then go back up to the gaming area at 8 o'clock and play through till midnight or 2 o'clock. And people were just sitting around trading cards, trying to find different cards, trying to work out what cards they
Yeah.
wanted, and it was a really good send off event. That was kind of the last event of the series, and it was I was always intending on just running it as 5 events, and then that was after about a decade of me doing EOing in the local community, and I was like, okay, I want to take a year off. I just want to roll dice, like just want to relax. And then a month later, COVID hit, and I'm like, fuck off. It's like,
Yeah. It's
but shit
amazing what
happens.
the world does. It's like the irony of it all. Just like, right,
It's like,
do right. Okay, come on, come on, come on. Yeah.
But so yeah, and it's all stuff like that. That once you take away the competitive side, the tournament and the podium finishes, you can start playing with all of that sort of stuff. Like
Yeah.
Act 5, I had it's over there somewhere. Do you know the puzzle cylinders? So it's a cylinder with all of the cogs on it, and you've got to like twist it and try and work out what when you turn all the cogs, it might be letters and numbers, and work out what the combination is. And if you get the combination, the cylinder opens up.
What?
At Act 5, I had one of these on the table, and throughout all of the mission briefings and through the scenarios, they would get like little data fragments, and those data fragments had hints as to what the combination of the cylinder was.
Oh.
Nobody knew what was in the cylinder. I wouldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But throughout the entire event, there was internal like currency, like you're awarded coins
Yeah.
for doing different missions and scenarios and secret objectives. You would get all of these coins. I've got somebody here. Like you probably can't see them, but yeah,
Yeah.
we had a heap of coins, so you could earn money, and you could use that money to buy things, like buy little prizes from the armory or an attempt to open up the lockbox. And so through the entire event, people were trying to open this lockbox, and nobody ever got the combination right. Until at the end of the event, I then kind of, well, it was really actually obvious because, like in all of these releases, the data fragments, I'd kind of bolded and increased a letter to like 30% higher, and that was the first letter of each thing. But no, but everybody was trying to interpret something else. And I thought I'd made it way too obvious because, like,
Yeah.
I've just made like this letter, like L. Every L in this data fragment was bolded and bigger. Then, okay, there's L, there's an A, there's nobody ever got it. So
No, everyone was going like, wait, that L on that specific line, it must mean something.
they were going deeper than that. They were reading the data fragment and they were kind of going, okay, yeah, I think like that would be a passage that Ferris would say, and that was in relation to this planetary assault, and here they lost like this division, so it could be the 21st Legion. It's like, the fuck? I'm sitting there. It's L. Like the hint is L. And that's the fun that you have from the EO side of it, which I think a lot of the EOs forget to do. They try to run these very, very regimented events and go, okay, now it's like just run it how you want. Screw with the players. Walk up to a player's table and go, yeah, asteroid just came out. Sorry, dude. It's like fucking that just went boom. Just screw with them. If they're the narrative players, they'll love it, and they do. It becomes part of like, oh fuck, what's Andrew going to do now? Just roll up and roll a couple of dice and go, shit, and then wander off again, and they're going to go, what's going on? What's happening? It's like, I just rolled some dice. It's all good. It's like,
I remember like I would do that all the time in like narrative campaigns, or even just like random like just campaigns I was doing in my shop, where it's just like I would just like go on a table and just roll a dice and like take the dice away and just like walk off and like, wait, what just happened? What?
Yeah.
And people were like, what?
It's great.
Or like I remember to this day, the kids that joined it into that narrative campaign, right, where there was one table I realized where like all the kids were camping. They're all camping and they were just like trying to take pot shots at each other. I was like, that's not going to feel right. Okay, cool. I'm going to go like, okay, from this turn on, everyone that stays still gets hit by line breaker bombardment. And then everyone started moving. I think like on the first turn, like the Blood Angels player like didn't move, and like Mephiston and his sanguinary priest got hit by line breaker bombardment and died. Then from that point on, everyone was moving all the turns. You had an Imperial Guard at like heavy weapons team just moving around, going like, just carrying their heavy bolter and just go like, just shoot it. It's okay.
Yeah. I remember Act 4, we, in the lead up to the event, I decided, all right, this one's going to be based around the sloth. The world is going to be infested with sloth. And I picked 3 people who I thought would run with the storyline really well. And kind of before the event, I teed them up and said, okay, your unit's been infiltrated by the sloth. So here's the model, because one of the models that we created for that particular year was sloth models for that particular purpose. So I gave them the model, gave them a pile of kind of sealed envelopes, and I said, okay, your mission is to infect the other players. So with the sloth model, if he lands a wound on another HQ model, after the game, give them an envelope. And the envelope basically says, you have been infiltrated and infected by the sloth. So it's the EO. And so they would come up to me, I'll give them a sloth model, and then tell them, okay, you've got to try and do this. So over the course of the 2 days of events, you could just see kind of these 3 guys. And one of them came up to me and goes, can I infect my own team? I'm like, sure. So he started going around and just kind of giving his own team like a tap on the shoulder and taking some of their HQ models and sending them over. By the end of the event, so this was Act 4, there were 80 players at Act 4. More than half of them were infected by the sloth. So it was like 48 or 46 players at the end. Kind of, okay, everyone put your hands up here if you're infected by the sloth. And it's like half the room. It's like, great.
Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean?
That's right. Well, for the story, basically, it meant that the Imperium lost. The Imperium was absolutely and utterly kicked off this planet, and all of the kind of the residual Imperial forces were stuck there. And the subsequent local campaign that we followed afterwards was it took the form of basically broken and scattered Imperial units because they couldn't go back to the city because it was controlled by the Maggot Men. And so all of the Imperial units scattered out into the countryside, and it was a campaign of kind of running around like a Centurion campaign. So it kind of laid the groundwork for the following campaign.
Wow. Wow, that is awesome.
And
Kudos to that lad, that mad lad that was like, you know what? Can I infect my own team? It's like,
yeah, that was Dave. So it was, it was really good, and that's where the best stories were from people running with, like Tim from Eye of Horus. One of his games that I was watching, he got infected pretty early, and basically he sacrificed the vast bulk of his army to like open a corridor, kill a corridor all the way through to the enemy HQ, so he could just run the sloth straight up this corridor of dead bodies so that he could infect the enemy's HQ. And he's like, he lost the game utterly and completely, but he's like, I infected Spence. That's all I wanted to do.
yeah. Oh my god.
It was great. So,
I just love that, like how you just implemented almost like a secondary objective to them that was more important to a lot of people than the primary objective of winning the game. That was just like, I don't care if I lose this game, I just want to infect you. I know what I'm going to do.
So that became a big thing with a lot of our campaign. Actually, was secondary objectives were an essential part of it. They would do something. So you would be on a set table that secondary objectives would start launching missiles at orbit or something like that, or it would shut down void shield generators, and people would start experimenting and trying to see what things would do. Like one of the ones at Act 3 was when you won, you could. It was in this artificial terraforming room, and you could increase the level of moisture or decrease the level of moisture. It was supposed to be for agricultural growth, and they kept on decreasing the level of moisture until the point it became just a lava map. It just got so hot, it was just lava everywhere. And I actually had 5 different mats for that particular table. So each time they changed the level of moisture, I would then go and quickly change the table between the games to represent it. So it went from normal agriculture land, and if they had have increased the moisture, I had flooded ones, but they never did. So it just kept on getting drier and drier, and then I had a lava map. It's like, okay, you've broken the terraforming room. It's just like collapsed and it's turned into lava everywhere. They're like, shit. But it was to such a point, the secondary objectives to such a point became a thing that one of the big events that Tim and Michael, the Eye of Horus guys in Brisbane, ran was they had something called the points of interest. And that's something that I latched onto pretty hard and incorporated. And it was, okay, you set up your map, and then depending on what you're playing, if you're playing Zone Mortalis, Centurion, or Frontline, that determines how many points of interest you do. And you deploy your points of interest just like one of your random objectives. So I go, okay, that rock looks interesting. There's a barrel over there and a tree. And it's a point of interest. And that's all it is. But to examine a point of interest, you need a character. So a character needs to be within 3 inches of it, just like an objective. And when they investigated it, you had a table, or I made up a big deck of cards. And so they went over there and they pulled a card over, and it's like, okay, no, sorry, vortex explosion, you're dead. Or a gas leak, or no, you found an agent, you found an apothecary that joins your squad, or you found enough ammunition so all your guns have now got twin linked. And then it evolved even further to some of the things that you could find were specific to that particular campaign. Okay, no, you've found some data, and you can resolve the data after this mission, and you give them the kind of slips of paper, and kind of some people would just so focused on the points of interest that, they wouldn't be winning games. They were just running around collecting of interests and go, I've got like 3 followers and I've come across like Xenos dogs that I mowed down and set off a radiation explosion that wiped out half the board. But I found this and this, and like an Archaeotech plasma pistol. It's like, I loved it.
Oh no, yeah. I think that like once players start not caring about like winning the game, I think that's when the real fun stuff happens. So when the weird, wacky stuff happens, where it's just like that's where the really interesting stuff, like that's where the narrative comes from, and that's where like I think like what most of the community actually really wants to see. Like I genuinely think I genuinely
if they can embrace it,
I genuinely think that like I think everyone can agree like cool shit happens. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a big deciding factor of men from the boys, to quote that terminology, in that some people go, okay, I'm definitely a narrative player, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes I actually really, really want to win, type thing. And kind of when you start playing those narrative games, those random scenarios, you can see some of those players start getting shitty, and it's like, what? No, this is unfair. It's like, dude, it's just a game. Calm down.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, just do what you can. Just do what you can with what you have.
That's right. So it's a game. Let's have fun. So, really, really good fun. Tim would run some really good ones. They were the best at it. So they would run nearly. It was a cross between an event and a role play game. So it was so heavily kind of orchestrated in that, anything could happen. They nearly had like a volunteer table to GM it, to games master the tables and that sort of stuff, to the point that there was actually one table where there was a proper games master who was doing certain things, and their events up in Brisbane were great. So I was looking forward to getting back up there. So Siege of Geigenhive, I think, was one of the big ones that I went to. It was I went on one of the tables. It was a 4-player Zone Mortalis.
Oh my!
In like a cross shape, and each player started on one of the ends of the cross. The table before that I'd been on, there was some kind of ruined tanks, and I asked whether my tech engineer could take one and try and get it started again. He's like, yeah, if you roll like 2 6s or something. It's like, I rolled double 6. It's like, haha, I've got this. He's like, all right, well, you can take it to the next table you go to. I'm like, ended up on a Zone Mortalis table. I'm like, this isn't good. So I picked an edge where there was a straight corridor that went like halfway in. So I just put this tank and just rolled it straight into and just wedged it in the walls and blocked off like 3 main corridors. And then everybody was trying to run around it. And then we hit a gas leak, and every level of radiation lowered everyone's toughness. And so we kept on hitting this radiation thing. And we were dropping down to toughness 1, and we hit it once more. So everyone toughness 4 died, except one player had fielded some bikes. So he was riding around Zone Wars bikes. It was okay. It was just good fun.
I think that. Oh man, that. So Mortalis with the tank, just like wedge it up there, just in like one of the corners, just like, yep, you can't get through that.
That's right. I was told I could bring it. It's like, I'm not going to shoot it. I'm just going to wedge it away. So, I soon died after that. But yeah.
But I think that is a classic move. That is a classic move. Oh man. Yeah. So what are you looking for?
All very good events.
Yeah. I think that those are amazing events. I wish I could have been there for that, but I think definitely after COVID, like I'm heading over to Australia. I'm definitely coming over to the events, and I'll be like, "Hello, yes."
Once we get things back up and running, it'll be good. It'll be
Yeah,
really
it'll be
good.
freaking awesome. Yeah. So, what are you most excited about, like, in the hobby, like for the future, or currently, or the future?
Um, it's a little weird. I suppose it changed focus a little bit. So I was intending on taking a break. Said so. I was kind of winding down from EOing, which I've always been passionate about,
Hmm.
and I was really keen to kind of. I had built Xenos armies and that sort of stuff to play in the Great Crusade, and then kind of no events were running, and so I've become pretty keen on a lot of the specialist games. So Necromunda is one of my big ones at the moment. I'm doing kind of a project with one of my mates called House by Teth, where
Yeah.
we're basically creating a whole fan supplement for a whole house by
What?
Teth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So like
This is new.
House
This is
Escher,
news to
House
me. I'm
Aura.
like,
So, um, so it's basically we loved Necromunda, but we were feeling that the current Necromunda was a little bit too high tech for what we were kind of used to and that sort of stuff. There was
hmm.
it really felt like they had access to a lot of gear, and so we wanted to kind of do our own thing where we were basically hive scum. And so House by Teth is kind of representing the really lower dregs, kind of a trade consortium that had gotten together to try and just stand against the major houses. So we kind of just started mucking around with that a little bit, and one thing led to another, and we kind of launched a Patreon, and we've now produced like a dozen models. We've kind of
What?
got a 180-page supplement that we're about to kind of release to free PDF, like a
What?
full-fledged house
Link
book.
this
We've
to
got
me. Link this to me so I can link it to everyone else. That
yeah.
sounds freaking amazing. Like, are those models
um,
able to be purchasable, or like, what are they? Are they
yeah, yeah. So
STLs?
they're STLs. So we're kind of